Disco Elysium is maybe one of the best ghost stories that I've ever heard, and if that statement doesn't make sense now, hopefully it will by the end. This game touches on some fun and lighthearted topics such as existentialism, grief, addiction, politics, depression, the list goes on. And these ideas are all wrapped up in one layer that's one part murder mystery, one part feel-good buddy cop detective story, in a world so saturated with lore and character that it really takes multiple playthroughs to fully understand it all. All of that, sprinkled with just a hint of the paranormal for pizzazz.
Truthfully, not a lot. I did everything a multi-pattern necktie can do to help a man.
However, I'd argue that more than all of these things, Disco Elysium is a game about pain, and how we deal with it. It's a game about longing, and just maybe, it's a game about redemption.
Exactly. The seagull does what it takes, and so do you.
It's truly a fantastic commentary about life and all the high and low points that accompany it. It's got a lot to say about all these topics, but just like any other trauma, that means that there's a ton to unpack. But for simplicity's sake, let's start at the beginning and go in chronological order. Without further ado, hop in and let's blast some sad FM. This is Disco Elysium, the most depressing and hopeful game that I've ever played.
Fine. Let's blast sad FM then.
Also, hey, this isn't a full review of the game, but I will spoil most of the main story beats as well as some side missions, since that's the most comprehensive way to talk about the themes of this game. So, there's your spoiler warning. Okay, back to the video.
There is nothing. Only warm primordial blackness. You're conscious ferments in it. No larger than a single grain of malt. You don't have to do anything anymore. Ever. Never, ever. Never, ever, ever, baby. An inordinate amount of time passes. It is utterly void of struggle. No ex-wives are contained within it.
This intro, aside from having some of the smoothest voice acting known to man, sets up all your standard RPG tropes and acts as an in-universe explanation as to why your character is basically a blank slate, with only vague hints as to who he was, with more popping up throughout the story. The conversation with your brain and limbic system nihilistically talk to you about a ball of evil apes and an ex-something that seems to haunt you. This, among other things, is the source of your pain and really the beginning of your downfall as a person, really painting a positive picture of the world right out of the gate. This may be a good time to mention that the skills that you pick in-game aren't just stat boosts. They're aspects of your person and will frequently chime in with advice to varying degrees of helpfulness.
Anderson here is wondering if you are still in possession of your genitalia.
Now is a good time to say fuck and ass and so on. That'll...
That's a negative.
And the higher your skill, the more outspoken they are about your current situation, which can lead to different outcomes, most of which are pretty funny. Anyway, they explain to you that you've really overdone it this time. On a bender of apocalyptic proportions that's lasted a few days, you've drank yourself into oblivion in an attempt to escape your life, ending with you destroying your hotel room while listening to sad music, and proclaiming, "I don't want to be this kind of animal anymore." So not a strong start for sure. After that, you regain consciousness on the floor of your destroyed hotel room, gather your belongings including a single shoe and a horrific necktie that may or may not be talking to you.
Warning, warning, the necktie is no longer contained.
You take a long hard look in the mirror and you head out.
You are correct.
The first person you see refers to you as a cop, which you obviously don't recall being. You've also seemingly misplaced your gun and badge, which are definitely not good things if you're a cop.
Fuck do you need a gun for? Look at the pythons on your arms. You are a gun.
Moving on from that, you head downstairs to get a better feel of your surroundings, which you soon learn is the city of Martinez. This place, much like yourself, has an extensive history, most of which is tragic, and it has also seen better days as of late, but we'll go over that in more detail later. Going downstairs, you meet your new partner, and my personal favorite character, the lovable Kim Kitsuragi, and you guys head out to investigate the whole reason that you've been in town making people uncomfortable for the last 3 days. A hanged man behind the hotel. This is the focal point of the plot of the game, and it's here that you have options in how you proceed and solve the murder. You can take side quests or not, you can piece together the pieces of your past or not, and depending on your choices, it will affect what kind of person that you end up being in the end. But I'm getting ahead of myself. First order of business is to interview the big players in the mystery. The leader of the dockworkers union, who are the suspected killers, an absolute unit of a man, Mr. Everett Clare.
Embarrassing yourself.
Am I going to ask? Hell, Harry. You spin-kicked my strongest man in the face. I saw it from my window. Would you ask a man like that how he got into your container yard?
Communicate. He's open. Rip into him. Right hook. Escalate it. Get intimate with him. Bring the hurt closer.
And the representative of the Wild Pines Corporation, Joyce Messier, the people who hired the armed mercenary gang in order to break up a working strike. The leader of which is the man currently hanging out behind the hotel. Get it? Hanging out? The starting bit of the game acts as world building to really reiterate the dire situation that the city is in. Things are rough around here, with some people striking, and others trying to break the strike so that they can feed their families. Most, however, are just trying to escape their lives by doing whatever it is they can to get a bit of happiness. Be that drinking at the bar, playing a game in a crater.
Merde! For that, what the hell is your problem?
Or for this little shit, throwing rocks at a dead guy behind the hotel. This has led the town to be a veritable powder keg. Life is hard and tensions are high. The place has been in a downward spiral since a failed communist revolution that was swiftly and violently put down by a democratic coalition that now oversees the area. That being said, overseeing the area is a very, very loose term, hence why most of the area is so downtrodden. There's even a blink and you'll miss it nod to this slow decay of the town in an area called the Doomed Commercial District. Yes, very subtle. We'll come back here later though. This is also the first part of the game where you can start to understand what led you to the current state that you're in. Digging through the garbage, you can find your detective clipboard. This, along with a bit of dialogue from Everett earlier, you learn that your name is Harry Dubois, and that you used to be a decorated cop with many years of service and many cases solved. More so than most, in fact. However, more importantly, hidden in this clipboard is a compartment with a note and some ticket stubs. This note is from your ex, back when you guys were together, and the ticket stubs are from a date that you guys went on. This part is pretty depressing, and so much of a shock to Harry that you're knocked unconscious, and Kim, being the homie that he is, brings you to his car to watch over you, and gives you some water when you wake up.
Sometimes I do. I can't believe I met you. I can't believe the happiness I feel with you. You have a vast, vast soul, and I will always. Oh, kisses, kisses, kisses. You feel the air sucked out of your lungs and the blood sucked out of your head. Everything around you gets dark. Small white dots appear. You feel the ledger slip from your... No, hold on. To what? There's nothing.
Detective, is everything all right?
There is nothing. Again.
Still trying to hold on to the great sorrows slipping in the water, 'cause it's always there.
Bloated corpse of the past resurfacing. Don't prod at it. It will start moving again.
This is one of the many times in the game where it hits you with an emotional haymaker, and really where I think it has something to say about pain and how people deal with it. Harry spent all this time trying to forget the tragic events by burying himself with work or by abusing drugs and alcohol just for it to come back at a later time. However, confronting it is oftentimes just as painful as avoiding it. Even the little things, such as specific scents or small trinkets, can bring back powerful memories and emotions, both good and bad. It's like when you smell a book and you think of middle school scholastic book fare, but in this case it's fruit gum reminding Harry of the woman that broke his heart. Things like this can really be a form of grief, and that type of thing comes in waves. Getting over it can be difficult, and people tend to tackle these problems differently. Talking to all these people will pretty much take all of the first day, which you can end off on this really touching end of day recap with Kim on the balcony of the hotel. This part feels to me like when you go outside to do some thinking on a cool night, just soaking in the silence, and no matter how stressful your day, this can be a bit of a respite, which is something that Harry desperately needs given his life. Laying down to sleep, you'd assume that's it for the day, but unfortunately for you, this ride is only beginning, as sleep brings a dream where you're the hanged man talking to yourself, and your mind and body berate you for your life choices. They make sure to remind you that your ex definitely isn't coming back, and that you have no friends.
That's right, funky baby. And you just stood there. Tell me, where are your friends? Human beings have friends, Harry boy. Where the hell are yours? No, it's gone.
Clockwork barely let you sleep at all. Time to go to work in the shit factory.
You awaken on day 2 to really knuckle down on some serious detective work, until your body explains to you that it's finally run out of drugs and tries to convince you to get more, arguing that without them, you're a shell of a person and you're too old and broken to do your job. However, we shrug the thought off and continue onward. Throughout the day, you'll probably get the body down and do an autopsy, finding out that the victim was actually shot and that the hanging was just a cover-up. Talking to Joyce and doing a side quest for her, you can discover that the mercenaries are planning a tribunal and will execute one or possibly all of the union workers that they think are responsible within the week.
It'll be all of them. The decision.
Unless you can find the person that killed him, and that just leaves talking to the suspects. They're a rowdy bunch that aren't willing to cooperate easily, as they don't view you as a legitimate cop and definitely don't respect your authority. However, persevering through their insults and using some clever dialogue, you can eventually get them to talk. They all equally confess to the hanging after the mercenary got a little too handsy with a woman and some other not so good behaviors. You see, this mercenary was not a very good person, and due to his past military service, he had a tendency to act out in some not so good ways. However, finding a bullet in his brain pokes a few holes in the Hardy Boys' story. Just like the mercenary's brain. See what I did there? Anyway, we'll come back to this part of the story later, because taking down the body removes Kim from your party, and you can work on some side stuff at this time. One of which can be talking to a pawn store owner, who, upon speaking to him, you find that you pawned your gun to out of fear of using it on yourself.
When you buy firearms, you put the gun barrel in your mouth and sort of sucked on it then.
You sucked on a gun? Good. Very normal.
You can also check the Doom commercial area, investigate a supposed curse that causes businesses to go under. Checking the intercom, you can try calling some of the areas in the building, and in one, you hear a sad memory played back from a woman who once lived there.
Michelle, just please.
Sounds like a ghost. Wind blows through your clothes and you feel detached from your surroundings. Inside the building, a cold memory hangs.
This is the first instance of the Pale, which is loosely speaking a physical phenomenon in the world of Disco Elysium, where human memories seem to be creating an atmosphere of pure nothingness that devours and distorts everything in it. Even the physical world of Disco Elysium can't escape the literal ghost of its past, and in turn is coming back to haunt and eventually destroy it. One bit of dialogue states that most of the landmasses in the world of Elysium are surrounded by this in a 2-to-1 ratio, and it is spreading. This basically means that the world is eventually doomed to be swallowed by the Pale. In a less metaphysical sense, you can also find several ghosts of old businesses that once existed in the building, all of which failed for one reason or another. This includes a gym that reminds you of your past, an old game studio that tried to create a radio game which quickly increased in scope and eventually ran out of money, and an old ice cream place which sold ice cream out of a giant bear fridge that scared everyone away. However, not all here is doomed to fail. You can find a bit of hope in a woman who makes novelty dice, seemingly unaffected by the curse. I think she's meant to play into the game's theme of redemption, where even in the bleakest and most dead of areas, there can still be hope for the future. She's a testament to the perseverance against the odds. Despite everything failing around her, she's been there for a while seemingly unaffected. Even her room has a brighter and more lively color palette and setup than the rest of the building, despite it being in a literal chimney. It feels like a safe space amongst all the doom and gloom of the area. Doing all this basically marks the end of day 2. You lay down to sleep, and much like the other days, you speak to your brain and body again. However, instead of berating you, they talk to you candidly about the absolute state of your body and the sheer damage that you've done to it. It's a miracle that you're still even standing. They just don't get it. You're an artist, and liver damage is your art. However, there's no time to dwell on that.
Time to rise and wipe that shining sweat off as best you can. Gather your bearings. Rock and roll.
Day 3 is when the game really starts to open up, and you can dive headlong into the actual plot of the game, which involves questioning the Hardy Boys again. Before that, however, you can speak to some very out-of-place looking people.
Me? No. I'm just a man with sunglasses. I like wearing sunglasses inside. Sunglasses and a fucking wig.
I'm just looking out for you.
With a little bit of deduction work, you can gather that they used to be your partners at Precinct 41, and that they've come to check on you. As mad as they are about your recent conduct, they seem to genuinely care about you. But that's all the interaction you can do with them for now, though. After some run around with the Hardy Boys, they instruct you to talk to a woman named Classy, who was the last person the victim was seen alive with, and also the woman that you talked to upon starting the game. The Hardy Boys claim that she was about to be struggle-snuggled by the mercenary, which is why they killed him. However, talking to her, that wasn't the case. In fact, she genuinely seemed to enjoy his company. After even more running around, you can finally get them all to crack, and admit that the hanging was a cover-up for Classy, who has a shady past. And if she was investigated for murder, they'd uncover enough for her to be sentenced to death. However, she wasn't the one who killed him. He seemed to be shot from somewhere else, and a woman named Ruby just helped orchestrate the cover-up along with the Hardy Boys. Ruby then fled upon hearing you, personally, were coming to investigate, commenting that you're a human can opener. Despite the dumpster fire that you are now, you were either a damn good cop or a very corrupt one, or perhaps both at one point. The Hardy Boys comment that Martinez is a refuge for people like Classy, somewhere for those running from their past to go. This theme persists throughout the game, with many of the characters stuck in this limbo area of life just trying to get by, without being burdened by their past. And maybe that's why you ended up here. Your story is a parallel to the city of Martinez. Just like most of the people here, you're running from your past trying to escape the pain, but it seems to always catch up to you. Both you and this area have a long history filled with tragedy, but unlike you, who forgot everything, the bullet holes and blasted bits of wall act as a constant reminder of the history of this place. Some people want to move on and make something new, and some are not able to, constantly living in the past. Now that that's all done, we can proceed with the investigation. The only thing left to do is to find and question Ruby before the tribunal. And thankfully, the water lock has been repaired, and the lower half of the map is now accessible. We can check out possible areas that the killer was shooting from. Across the bridge is a small fishing village, but taking a quick detour to the ocean, you can see where someone drove their car into the water. You and Kim wait until the tide recedes, and a sinking feeling in your gut starts to hit you. Upon inspection, you realize this is your car. In a drunken state, you crashed into the whirling's fence, ramped over the bridge, and sunk it into the ocean. Inside is your badge and coat, more remnants of your past that you apparently tried to drown. Inspecting your badge, your full rank and name are shown, along with a slightly less depressed picture of yourself.
His face is already contorted by the expression. Although it looks less grotesque on him, then it looks better on him, because he isn't in as much pain while producing it as you are now. Although there's already a hint of that pain, so don't be fooled. The bad times have already begun.
Apparently you've been sad for far longer than a few years, the seeds of which were clear even back when this picture was taken. After this venture, we can speak with some of the residents of this village, finding out that Ruby stayed here and is probably hiding up the coast somewhere. You can start a side quest by talking to these kids who want to start a nightclub in the old church, and purchase a secret tool that will help us later from a hobo. It's at that point that it's about time to turn in for the night, but not before snatching New Bird for Gart and convincing him to let you sing a sad song on the karaoke stage.
I would often go there, to the tiny church there, the smallest church in Saint-San, though it once was larger. But baby, a million little lights in the dark. You're one fine instrument, brother.
Again, you lay down to have a conversation with your brain, this time talking about the world, and despite your efforts, you can't forget it anymore. You're part of it. To which you can appropriately respond with some dialogue about not wanting to forget the world anymore. It's beautiful. This is one of the parts where the theme of hope is shown again. Despite all the gloom and doom around you, the world is equally as good. Sure, there's death and sadness, but there's also hope and beauty. You just have to look for it. Which I think is the point of some of the side quests. Helping these people out and pursuing your passions can really make life worth living. You awaken on day 4 to explore the rest of the coast and see if you can find where the shot came from, as well as finishing up some side quests. I helped these kids establish a nightclub in the abandoned church, bringing new life to this dead area and putting them on a better life path. And possibly, maybe even finding a hole in the universe. This programmer that worked in the Doom commercial area, despite being bitter about the failed business, has moved on to find a new passion to pursue. She's been trying to measure an anomaly in the church, and with a little help from you and the Raver kids, you can actually listen to what the anomaly sounds like. It's heavily implied that this is the start of the pale spreading here. Even more astounding than that, you can make Lieutenant Kitsuragi dance with you. Exploring the coast for clues about the murder, you can help the cryptozoologist set up traps of the phasmid, and even go on a date. I think these quests are meant to show how others respond to tragedy. The netpicker moving on from the death of her husband and going on a date with you, and the cryptozoologist continuing his search despite the overwhelming odds that the creature doesn't exist, everyone remarking that the phasmid is a myth. Further up the coast you can find a second dead body, a man who drank too much and had an unfortunate accident where he slipped, hit his head, and died. You can remark here that that could have been you had you kept up on the path that you were on, a wake-up call and a cautionary tale to Harry. Nearby is an abandoned building, where passing a high-level shivers check, which is some kind of odd psychic link to the world, the soul of the city will tell you that Ruby is down there. And you and Kim make your way in. It's here where you can confront Ruby, who has created what is essentially a death ray to keep you guys away. She explains that Classy actually set up the hanging, but neither she nor Ruby actually killed the man. We let her leave and continue on. We head back to the Whirling to see that the tribunal has started. Mercenaries have brought in a third guy and are at a standoff with the Hardy Boys. Unfortunately, you can't save everyone here. These people have come for blood and can't be reasoned with. The best you can do is mitigate the amount of casualties by intervening in the fight yourself. This is where if you worked for Everett, you'd have your gun, but instead I used my horrific tie and the medicinal spirit that I bought from the hobo to make a Molotov, aptly named the Spirit Bomb.
With a crash of shattering glass and a terrible roar, the fire draws in oxygen. In the fiery inferno, you see your tie, coiling around the man's neck. It is no longer horrific, but beautiful and pure.
I only ever wanted you to have fun, Harry.
Which you can finally get some backstory on why the tie talks to you. Rest in peace, you beautiful ugly thing, you will be missed. Kim, being the Chad he is, Deadeye style shoots the mercenary in the head and detains another after you get grazed by a bullet. This is unfortunately unavoidable.
Then, 2 shots ring out and you hear a scream. But you're too hurt. Blood gushes from the helmet's eye sockets as Rude staggers back. An unbelievable shot from the lieutenant.
If you don't pass this check, Kim will actually be shot here and will have to be rushed to the hospital, which is the worst possible ending because Kim is the best character. However, even if this tragedy comes to pass, there's still hope. Kuno steps up and will take his place and tag along for the rest of the game, showing that even for someone who's lived a whole life of bad decisions, you can still change for the better. However, for this playthrough we made sure that Kim stays. After you get shot, you pass out from blood loss, and again your brain and body talk to you while you're unconscious. They refer to you as the infernal engine that never stops, and that soon you will get up, and soon you'll go through it again. You truly are a persistent person despite everything that you've been through.
Hours turn to days. Soon we will get up again and go through. It was him. He is the infernal engine. He never stops. He only gets.
We're awakened a few days later by Kim, who saved you. Despite all the bloodshed, it wasn't a total loss. Full-scale civil war was avoided despite half the Hardy Boys being killed. The only thing left to do is to carry on and solve the murder. You inspect Classy's room to find a note saying that she left and that she didn't kill him, and that you should check the roof. On the roof, you find that she set up a ballistics line of sight towards the island. So we borrow the Netpicker's boat and head off to the island, blasting Sad FM along the way.
Small town.
What? Fine. Let's blast Sad FM then.
On the island, you find that it's an old communist bunker from the war, with traces that someone's been staying here, including a bed which you can nap on. Doing so brings up probably the most painful dream for Harry and one of the saddest scenes in the game. It's the day his wife left him. In the dream, she's depicted as the deity Dolores Day from the church. Due to her beauty to Harry, he envisions her as an almost godlike being. Talking to her prompts this painful conversation about lost love and why she's leaving. She remarks that she's gone, and nothing you can say will win her back. She's moved on and it's time that you do the same. It's an emotional gut punch to Harry and in turn the player because we become so invested in his story. She explains that he has a history of being depressed and having some poor coping mechanisms. And I think it's implying that's why she's leaving. She goes on to say that she'll see him again because he has this dream 3 or more times a week, which is probably why he tried to forget it all. She ends off by saying that eventually he will move on. It may take 20 years, but it's best he forget her. There's many options that you can pick here, but I think thematically the most fitting one is to explain that you've almost solved the case and to tell her goodbye.
Real darkness has love for a face. The first death is in the heart, Harry. See you tomorrow.
Waking up, it's time to finish this, so we head through a door to an outdoor area populated by a lone old man. This is the Deserter. He's the man who shot the mercenary. He's the last survivor of a communist regime that was put down by the Coalition, who has been living here for the last 40-something years. This man is haunted by the ghost of his past and is unable to move on, so he simply survives here and has grown to hate everyone and everything. He's become too bitter and angry to reintegrate with society, so he just watches the world move on without him from this island. The island's basically a testament to everything that he believes in, but is now as empty as he is, a ghostly reminder of his failed ideology and all his dead comrades. While watching Society, he developed a fixation on Classy, leaving her flowers, which we found on the roof. And when he saw her with the mercenary, he decided to kill them both, but he couldn't bring himself to kill her too. This would kick off the events of the game and would eventually lead him to be captured. It's at this time that you hear something off in the reeds. Upon inspecting it, you find it's the phasmid that the cryptozoologists have been looking for. Despite the creature being here this whole time, the Deserter is so blinded by his anger that he can't see it, or any of the other beauty in this world for that matter. It took me until this most recent playthrough to realize that the title screen is his view from the island. You can see all of the city, its cool architecture, and even the terrifying beauty of the Pale from the sniper's nest there. You approach the creature, and if you have a high Inland Empire skill, you can have a mental conversation with it. It explains that it's been here since before the city was founded, and that it emits a chemical that keeps it hidden. The chemical seemingly kept the deserter sharp and lucid in his old age, however, it explains that it is dangerous, but only over long periods of time, which explains the now declining health of the deserter, noted by him coughing up blood. It talks to you about lots of existential topics, including the final fate of the world, and what existing is like for it and for yourself. It explains that humans will almost certainly destroy everything, citing that they created something as destructive as the Pale by sheer accident. So really, no matter what we do, things are doomed to eventually die out. And take that as you will, but given our playthrough, we really made some positive changes here, and even if it will eventually all cease to exist, for this moment, we did some good. It also gives this chunk of dialogue that I'll let play out here.
Behind the mirror. That must be incredibly hard. The Arthropods are in silent and meaningless awe of you. Know that we're watching. When you're tired, when the vision spins out of control, the insects will be looking on, and when you fall, we will come to raise you up. Bud from you, banner-like, blossom from you and carry you apart in a sky funeral, in honor of your passing.
In honor of your shit, Lieutenant Yfreiter, which you kept together in the face of total unrelenting terror, day after day, second by second.
After that, Kim snaps a picture of the rare beast and it leaves. Without the Phantom's chemical, the deserter quickly goes into a catatonic state. You and Kim take a boat back to arrange the transport for him and are met on the mainland by your partners from your task force, which you were in charge of, who are now here to judge you. It's here that they go over one final recap of your adventure, which you and Kim can comment on. They explain that this sort of thing has happened before, albeit not as severe, you've still dipped your toes into it, and that they worry about you due to your oftentimes reckless behavior and not good coping mechanisms. Despite you telling them to fuck off for cramping your style, they still seem to genuinely care about you. They also fill in some blanks from your past. Before joining the police force, you were a gym teacher, which was hinted at earlier. You met your ex, and she inspired you to become a police officer, and then she left you. It's been 6 years now, and you haven't been able to get over it yet. All of that being said, you solved the murder, discovered a new species, and turned some local kids onto a better path. And at least in my playthrough, you became a better person after it all, so they take you back. And if you have a high affinity with Kim, you can also recruit him to work at the 41st with you. You guys then drive off. Ultimately, this is the story of a broken man, doing anything he can to avoid his problems and run from his past. The story is kind of a tragic one, but the overall message is a hopeful one. Redemption is possible. It's a story that encourages us to keep getting back up despite the odds, and while confronting or accepting things isn't always easy, it's often necessary in order to move forward. Simply doing small tasks, helping someone out, or changing small things can have a big positive impact on yourself and those around you. And no matter how bad things look, there's always hope to be found somewhere. So no matter how burdened with life you are, you can persevere. Just keep putting one foot in front of the other, and keep moving forward. This is an absolutely beautiful game that's extremely well written and has many good messages you can take from it. I think it's got a lot of themes that most people can relate to, and it can be almost a beacon of hope in hard times. It's a story that does a great job at showing the best and worst parts that life has to offer. It was also extremely difficult for me to write in a cohesive manner, so I hope all of this made at least a little bit of sense and had some semblance of narrative flow. It's been on my list of stuff I've wanted to talk about for a while now, I just couldn't quite find the right words. The sheer amount of revisions that I've made to the script is nuts. I think it's one of the best RPGs that I've played in recent years, and one example of why I think games should be considered art, and that's all from barely scratching the surface of the game. I didn't even talk about many of the different fun or impactful dialogue options, or some of the other notable side quests, but I highly recommend you play it for yourself. It really is something special, and it's a story that should be experienced rather than just me summarizing or talking about it. I'm gonna end it off here though. Thank you so much for watching another one of my videos, or if you're new, thank you for checking this one out. If you want to watch other stuff like this where I talk too much about various things, I'll have a video essay playlist in the description or in the end cards, as well as the other things I do, like game reviews and icebergs and such. The Twitter's down there too if you want to follow me there. More videos coming out soon, TM. I appreciate your guys' patience. I plan on trying to get at least one spooky themed video done in time for Halloween, but we'll see how that goes. Again, thank you so much for watching this far if you've made it. Have a good one, and I'll see you next time.